Hello, welcome to Minority Voices. I'm Lola Thompson, and I am excited that you joined us today. We have a very special guest in the studio with us, Miss Diane Taylor with Taylor Made Publishing. And we're going to be talking today about getting your dreams, getting your books published, and the importance of getting your voice out there and leaving a legacy for your family. And Diane's here today to show us how to get that done. Diane, thank you for being a part of the program and for coming and sharing your information with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Ms. Thompson. I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yes. And I always like to start out, Diane, we're just going to have a little girl talk here just to kind of find out how you got into publishing, talk about you, the woman, the mission, and your message, okay? So just bring us up to speed some things about you.
Absolutely. So my name is Diane Taylor. I'm originally from upstate New York, but I've been in Greenville now for almost 15 years, so I consider this home. I am married, so I have a wonderful husband and also 2 children. I have a journalism background, so I've worked in television, radio, and newspaper. My undergraduate degree is in journalism. My master's degree is from East Carolina in technical and professional communications. And the reason I say that is because that's where I really got my love for writing. I've always had it. Since I was 4 years old, I knew that I loved to write. I knew that I loved news. So God kind of puts all those things together in the end, I guess, to make us whole. But at the time, I spent a lot of time reporting. When I moved here, I transitioned into public health and also trying to make sure that people got messages out about disparities with African Americans and things like that. And I loved what I did, but I didn't feel like that was where God necessarily wanted me to be. And then I met this gentleman, and his name is Carl Long. And Carl Long was a Negro League baseball player who actually lived in Kinston and was one of the youngest drafted into the league. And he came into my office. We had some mutual friends. And when he came into my office, I said, "Hey, how can I help you?" I'd never met him before. And he said, "God told me you were going to write my book." And I chuckled and said, "I'm sorry, but God didn't tell me that I was going to write your book." And he said, "Well, I'll wait." And he did. He persisted. Every year he would call and say, "You ready to write my book?" And so literally it was a 7-year process for me to decide that I could do this. In the meantime, though, I had gotten to know Carl, his family, his friends very well, and his story. And in January of 2013, I decided that was the one project that I had started but not finished. And I called him and told him that I would, in fact, write his book and that it would be finished by March of that year. And he came to my office, and true to my word, I had over 200 pages of his life story with a nice picture on the front. And I handed it to him and said, "Here's your life story. Who's going to publish it?" And he said, "You." I said, "Oh, no, sir. I don't know anything about publishing. You know, I didn't know anything about writing, let alone anything about publishing." He said, "No, you'll publish my book." And I knew by this point how persistent he was. So I said, "By the end of this year, I will publish your book, and you can give it to your family and friends for Christmas." And we agreed. In September of that year, he called me and said, "How's it coming with my book?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "I'm right on track," because I had to learn everything. I said, "But by Thanksgiving, you can have your book." And he said, "That's not going to work, because the President of the United States has called me and 9 other Negro League baseball players to the White House in October, and I got to have my book." And I said, No, you don't understand. I can't give the President of the United States my first self-published book. I cannot do that. Who does that?"
Right.
And he said, "You have to, and you will." And I did. And within 4 months, we had signed 5 other authors and had six works. So the rest, as they say, is history. But had it not been for Mr. Carl Long, I would have never found this passion that I have.
Wow. So, there is power in connections. And I'm a firm believer that God will put people in your path to cause your destiny to come to pass or your purpose to come out. And people are asking you questions. They're listening to you when you're sitting beside them having general conversations. So I really believe in the power of divine true connections. And I try to be very sensitive to the voice of the Holy Spirit when He leads us to do things and when people ask you questions. I have just become more aware to be careful of my response because sometimes we can allow people to help us or to reject us because sometimes we can be our worst self-critic. But that is such an awesome, awesome story. So you got this first book published.
That's right. So our first book was a self-published book, and I kind of want to make sure that our listeners know the difference between a self-published book and a published book through a publishing company, because
Okay.
I ended up starting a publishing company, so we actually offer both. When an individual chooses to self-publish their book, they maintain the ownership of that material. That means no one can change the title. That means no one can change the content, that they will always own the book, which is great for
Yes.
some. The issue is that also means that you're responsible for totally marketing and selling your book, which can be way more difficult than writing your book.
Okay, and that's some good information to know. And we're going to learn more when we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.